John Wayne Gacy, Jr., was born in Chicago on March 17, 1942. By all outward measures, his adult life resembled the American middle class. He managed a Kentucky Fried Chicken franchise in Waterloo, Iowa in the late 1960s. He married. He joined the JCs. He became a father. But in 1968, that life collapsed. Gacy was charged in Black Hawk County, Iowa, with the sodomy of a teenage employee. He pleaded guilty, was sentenced to 10 years, and entered the Anamosa State Penitentiary. He was a model prisoner. 18 months later, he was paroled. He returned to Chicago, settled near his mother, and in 1971 purchased the home on Somerdale Avenue. He started a small construction company called PDM Contractors, painting, decorating, and maintenance. He hired young men, often teenagers, paying them in cash. He remarried. He became active in local Democratic politics, posing for a photograph with First Lady Rosalind Carter in 1978, a photograph in which he wore a special security clearance pin. He also adopted 2 clown personas, Pogo and Patches, performing at parades, block parties, and charity functions for sick children. He was, in the words of neighbors, the man who threw the best summer barbecues on the block. But beginning in 1972, young men began to disappear from the corridors connecting Chicago's bus stations, gay bars, and working-class neighborhoods. Most were between 14 and 21 years old. Some were runaways. Some had simply gone out to look for construction work. Their cases drifted into the cold files of overburdened precincts. No pattern was drawn. No connection was made. For 6 years, the disappearances were not even recognized as a series. On the evening of December 11, 1978, 15-year-old Robert Peast finished his shift at Nissan Pharmacy in Des Plaines, Illinois. He told his mother, who was waiting in the parking lot for his birthday celebration, that he was going to step outside to speak with a contractor about a summer job. He would be right back. He never returned. His mother waited. Then she walked into the pharmacy. The contractor was gone. The boy was gone. By morning, the Peast family had filed a missing persons report, and unlike so many disappearances before, this one would not be filed away. The case was assigned to Lieutenant Joseph Kozingczak of the Des Plaines Police Department. Kozingczak quickly learned the contractor's identity from pharmacy staff. It was John Wayne Gacy. Kozingczak ran the name. Out came the 1968 Iowa sodomy conviction. The detective requested a search warrant. On December 13, 1978, officers entered the house on Somerdale Avenue. They found driver's licenses that did not belong to Gacy. They found a high school class ring engraved with initials that did not match. They found a receipt from Nissan Pharmacy in the kitchen wastebasket, a photo development slip bearing the name of Kim Byers, a teenage co-worker of Robert Peast. Earlier that evening, Byers had borrowed Peast's parka. The slip had been in the pocket. It was thin evidence, but it placed the missing boy's jacket inside Gacy's home. Officers also noted a smell, a peculiar organic odor that rose from a small access panel in a closet. Behind that panel was a crawlspace roughly 4 feet high running the length of the house. For more than a week, surveillance teams followed Gacy everywhere he went, to restaurants, to gas stations, to attorney meetings. Gacy invited them in. He cooked them breakfast. He told them they were wasting their time. Inside investigators' offices, the evidence was reanalyzed. The class ring was traced to John Scheich, a young man missing since 1977. A car Gacy had been seen driving was traced to another missing youth. Polaroid photographs developed from the first search began revealing more potential victims. On December 21, 1978, a second search warrant was issued. This time, evidence technicians entered the crawlspace. What they found rewrote Illinois criminal history. The space had been divided, mentally and physically, into burial trenches. Within hours, the Cook County Medical Examiner's Office dispatched anthropologists from local universities. The recovery operation would last weeks. By the end, 26 sets of human remains had been recovered from beneath the house. 3 more were found elsewhere on the property. 4 additional victims, dumped when the crawlspace had run out of usable space, were recovered from the Des Plaines River. The total reached 33. The investigation that followed was a forensic landmark. In an era before DNA profiling was available to law enforcement, identification depended almost entirely on dental records, healed fractures, and personal effects. Forensic odontologist Dr. Edward Pavlik led much of the dental comparison work. Detectives compiled a national missing persons cross-reference of unprecedented size. Of the 33 victims, only 9 remained unidentified by the time the case closed in 1980. But the work did not end there. In 2011, then, Cook County Sheriff Tom Dart announced a renewed effort. Surviving family members of long-missing young men from the 1970s were invited to submit DNA samples. The remaining unidentified Gacy victims would be exhumed and re-examined using genetic genealogy. As of the mid-2020s, several have since been named, decades after they were buried, as John Does. The case taught American law enforcement a structural lesson. Multiple missing persons reports, filed across multiple jurisdictions against a single name, had failed to surface for years because no central system connected them. The Gacy investigation became a foundational argument for what would eventually become the FBI's Violent Criminal Apprehension Program, VICAP, launched in 1985. On March 13, 1980, after a 6-week trial in Cook County, John Wayne Gacy was convicted on 33 counts of murder. The jury deliberated less than 2 hours. He was sentenced to death and incarcerated at the Menard Correctional Center, later transferred to Stateville. For the next 14 years, Gacy gave interviews. He wrote letters. He painted clown portraits in his cell. He maintained a posture investigators and forensic psychiatrists found chillingly consistent. He denied responsibility. He insisted that employees of his contracting company must have committed the crimes. He spoke of himself in the third person. He referred to his alternative selves, Jack Hanley, a fabricated alter ego he claimed had emerged at moments of stress. Dr. Helen Morrison, a forensic psychiatrist who interviewed Gacy for hundreds of hours, would later describe a man who appeared, beneath the surface charm, to lack the developmental capacity for genuine attachment or empathy. Court-appointed evaluators reached related conclusions, though the legal standard for insanity was not met. Gacy was found legally responsible for his actions. Modern criminologists studying the Gacy case have emphasized several behavioral patterns now considered classic markers of organized predatory offending. The compartmentalization, a public life of civic involvement layered over private offenses. The use of legitimate employment to access victims, particularly young men in economically vulnerable positions. The geographic confinement of crimes to a controlled environment, a private home, a literal hidden space. And the meticulous, almost bureaucratic record-keeping, receipts, identification documents, photographs. What made Gacy especially difficult to detect was not exotic. It was, in fact, the opposite. He was ordinary, he was sociable, he was useful to his neighbors. He was, in clinical terms, what investigators now call a mask of normalcy, a documented pattern in which a serial offender constructs a public identity so unremarkable, so mundanely respectable, that the cognitive dissonance required to suspect him is itself a defense. For families of the missing, that mask had real consequences. In the years before the discovery, mothers and fathers had reported their sons missing. Some had even named John Gacy. Several had been told in the language of the era that runaway teenagers were not a police priority. Those failures haunted the case long after the verdict. CTA, 1213 Min, cases like this one don't end with a conviction. They end, if they end at all, with names, with every John Doe restored to a family, with every detective who refuses to let a file go cold. If you believe these stories deserve to be told carefully, factually, and with respect for the people behind the headlines, consider subscribing to CrimeDossier. New investigations are released each week, drawn from court records, archival reporting, and the patient, often invisible work of forensic professionals who never make the front page. Outro 1315 Min. On May 10, 1994, John Wayne Gacy was executed by lethal injection at the Stateville Correctional Center in Crest Hill, Illinois. He left no confession. He left no apology. He left instead a question that has shaped American criminal investigation ever since. How does a society recognize a predator who looks exactly like a neighbor? The crawlspace beneath the Summerdale house has long since been filled. The home itself was demolished. But the lessons remain, embedded in databases, in interagency protocols, in the way a missing persons report is now expected to be received. 33 young men were lost in the spaces between those systems. The work of naming them continues to this day. For the families still waiting, the story is not yet over. In December 1978, a single pharmacy receipt found in a Chicago suburban home led detectives to one of the most disturbing crime scenes in American history. Beneath the floor of John Wayne Gacy's ranch-style house, investigators uncovered remains that would force a generation of police, prosecutors, and forensic specialists to rethink how predators operate and how missing persons cases must be tracked. This CrimeDossier investigation walks step by step through the verified record. The 1968 Iowa conviction, The disappearance of Robert Piest. The Des Plaines police investigation led by Lieutenant Joseph Kozingczak. The December 21st search warrant, and the forensic identification work that continues to this day under Cook County Sheriff Tom Dart's DNA initiative. We examine the criminal's psychology behind the mask of normalcy, the structural failures that allowed the case to remain undetected for years, and the legacy that shaped the FBI's VI-CAP program. No graphic content, only documented facts, court records, and verified reporting. Timestamps: 0000, the receipt 00, 50 Norwood Park Township 0100 Section 1, the setup 0300 Section 2, the crime 0600 Section 3, the investigation 0900 Section 4, the psychology 1200 subscribe 1300 final thought.